YouTube and social media creates environments and creates cultures. And so this culture that's building is compassion equals no boundaries for kids, no responsibility for their behavior, give them a candy bar, send them back to class. And that's a culture that's building, and it's kind of growing. So I'm sort of trying to figure out how what is our response to that?
And I feel like compassion is boundary. Like compassion is also boundaries. Like setting a firm boundary is compassionate to me and it's compassionate to you. Like because then you're learning in a sense how the world works, and you're learning also like where you end and other people begin, and where your responsibility ends and where other people's begins, and where you can grow into, what's the podcast, We Can Do Hard Things. Like I just love the title of it. It's like, yeah, this is really hard and we can do it. And sort of it's this both and I think this comes up a lot in my work consulting in schools, and sort of like, we need accommodations for kids that are anxious, but it can't be, you don't have to go to class. Like it needs to be like, what can we do to help you stay in class? Let's start with you going to class and then figure out how long you can stay. Not let's start with you not in class and then figure out, how to get you to class. Like, again, that feels very old fashioned, and it's not, hard and fast rule of mine, but I do feel like we're in this really tricky situation where we are, confusing compassion with sort of a lack of responsibility. And that line is always going to change across cultures, across aspects of society. But I think we've swung in a direction that has been not so helpful for a lot of kids. And learning how and where we, start to help kids see how much more they are capable of than they might realize, I think is really important. That they can hold themselves to a standard of like, oh, I was able to stay in class today. I was able to manage my behavior and these different things, and I can learn how to take responsibility. And it's really hard. I don't want to go back to all punishment by any means, but it's like where it's really hard. There's been more of a cultural conversation around boundaries, and I think that's very much needs to happen. I think in general, but I think that needs to happen particularly in education, where I think there's that sort of like badge of honor about whose car is the last one to leave the parking lot and that kind of thing. And that's in psychotherapy world as well. Sort of like who has the worst boundaries. It's like making the biggest
Gets rewarded
sacrifice, and it's not helpful at a certain point. And that's a privilege, as like a white dude, that's a pretty privileged thing to say. I think it's more complex for different groups of people than it is for me, but I just want to acknowledge that too.
This will be a quote I will use forever, Chris. Compassion is boundaried. I've never heard that before. Compassion always seems so, right? Just so, and I love that aspect that it's boundaried.
Yeah.
Yeah.